Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for April 28th, 2023. I'm Benji Fisher, moderating, and also present are Ralph Kohler, who's sharing his screen, and we'll start off the discussion. Quinn Pham and Mike Gifford. So go ahead, Ralph.
Okay. The issue we are looking at right now is number 2985887. The topic is make course structure descriptions more consistent. The issue is, as I already mentioned at the beginning, before the meeting, already on the shortlist for a while, and it was brought up recently again. So the current state is basically visible in here. We have the current list of descriptions, and underneath is the proposed resolutions, trying to make the descriptions a bit more consistent. One, I've already made a small list of points that struck my eye and I've noticed, and I could list those, and then we can discuss and also go through the points you notice. Shall I, for the recording, read the proposed resolution?
I don't think so, but could you show us these in context? Are these links in the admin menu or something?
It's in here on the structure page. It's referring to that one, basically.
So do these descriptions also show up as hover text or title attributes if you're looking at the admin menu? No, put the admin menu in vertical mode.
Oh, that way you mean, okay. Oops. No.
I don't see any link text. Are you seeing it?
No. Oops. Second.
It must be because you probably have the admin toolbar module.
Yeah. Shall I uninstall quickly?
Don't bother. I just checked on my site and I do see link text. I think it's the same link text.
Okay.
That appears on the structure page.
I've got to say that the first thing I looked at when I saw that the list and the issue and the proposed changes is that why is it that the block layout doesn't have create when all of the others do? Because it seemed that you can create blocks in the block layout, right? It's not just if there's you can create an empty block and put content into that. Can you not?
You can create on the block placement page. You're able, if you go to block layout placement, you're able to add a new content book. So basically, you're able to create.
So you can create and you can create. Yeah. So if you can create and manage, then why is that different than all the others? And then when you actually looked at the structure of the pages that were on the page itself, is like that would look really boring if you had the exact same text create and manage for all of the different structural items.
You know, it's sort of redundant. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 words are more or less the same across all the descriptions.
Yeah. So if you're doing this as a bulleted list, you try and go off and to bring those up and you try and separate that out so that the structure is about creating and managing content, and then it's about block layout, what appears in your sidebar, block types, display settings for your content blocks, content type or comment types, how your comments are displayed and organized, something like that.
It's a bit eased due to the titles, aka block layout, block types, comment types, and so forth. But if you would only see the descriptions, then you run into the problem for screen readers, meaning the interesting parts come at the end, and before that is redundant text.
Yeah.
Identical all the time. That is one of the points I've also noticed. Yep.
It certainly doesn't encourage you to read it.
Yeah. And also stylistically, you have "and" twice in a sort of a sequence. But basically, what's to the sentence, you create and manage fields, forms, form settings, and display settings, but you're only able to create fields, but you're unable to create form and display settings. That's also in, for example, in the context of content types. That's also one slight nitpick. Because the forms and displays don't have anything to create. If you take a look, for example, in here, content type, manage fields. Here you're able to create a field, but there you're just able to enable or disable and move the order around. Same for the manage display.
Okay, so maybe now that we've seen it in context, we can go back to the issue and look at the proposed changes.
Yep.
Can you zoom in a little bit? That's good. Thank you. And let's take them one at a time.
Yep.
Start with block layout.
One way to make it like at least visually more interesting or more clear is to take the things that are different, that are relevant, that are not just create and manage, but to take everything that's distinct to the type of content or structure that you're modifying and put that in bold. So like in the block layouts, you could bold what block content appears in each region of the theme. So with the book, you can highlight book outlines and allowed content type settings for books.
And you're suggesting that just for this discussion, right? Or are you suggesting that as the actual display?
I think it could be good for the display to
Okay.
bold that.
That's right. We're building web pages. We can make things bold and italic if we want to.
Or let's look at basically the text editor and then make it the size okay that way.
Yeah, that works well.
Yeah.
Okay, block layout.
I mean, it's everything after, almost everything after sort of create and manage, like you just bolding the other, everything else.
Yeah, but block layout is the exception to that pattern. It's just manage what block content appears in each region. And that is also one detail in each region for each theme, having each within in a range of 5 words sounds also or reads a bit odd.
Okay, so I vote that we move block layout out of the structure menu so that this doesn't come up.
Yeah, but good point. But at the moment, if you take a look at the issue you've created, Benji, there it reads currently block layout. Use the link under appearance.
Well, that's sort of a stopgap measure. And
it just means that way it's impossible to move it out. But I agree, it would be best to move it out. and would ease our lives.
But it would confuse the users.
I'm sorry, what will confuse users?
Oh, moving the block layout out of the structure.
But we're going to do it anyway,
Okay,
if I have my way.
okay.
The only question is how we minimize the disruption, but I'm sorry, I am distracting us from the current discussion.
Okay. Well, it's good that we don't have to fix, we don't necessarily have to, that's not necessarily a problem then that the block layout is different.
Because I will have my way sooner or later.
That's what was it Carthage said in Rome? No, it's I will not something until something is destroyed.
Yeah, so if we're going to have create and manage on all of them, can we just put that into the page header or something? But then also consider that these descriptions are used as title attributes on links in the core administration menu. So consistency is good, but repetition is bad. So what do we do?
Would it make sense to add the information in regards of create and manage fields, not to the title, but maybe to a help text above the list of available options there?
Yeah, that's what I was just suggesting.
Ah, okay. I've understood you meant in the title itself to change
Oh.
something. Okay.
No. Oh, and Aaron McHale has joined us. Aaron, we're discussing the text that appears on the structure page and also as cover text or title attributes on links in the admin menu.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm running late, so I'm actually outside at the moment joining from my phone, but hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes, loud and clear.
Yep.
Perfect. Is the what's on your screen, Ralph? Is that the is that what this is what we're suggesting?
Those at current descriptions, the list is basically in the issue summary is the current state. Proposed descriptions is in the issue summary. That is the proposal by the people who have worked on it, and underneath that's where we at the moment. Starting.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I see the block layout one because I remember earlier today I proposed on the issue to move block layout to appearance. I'd also I'd given an additional suggestion for what we should call that sort of temporary link. I don't know, Benji, if you'd seen my suggestion for that yet.
Yeah, I saw that, but
Okay.
let's try to stay focused on one issue at a time.
Sure. I mentioned it because it was on the screen there. So yeah.
Right, that's my fault. I already distracted us.
How about for the help text, something like on the following pages, you're able to create and manage something. Because to the end, pattern is broken. menu, taxonomy, views don't have the manage fields, form, and display settings pattern.
And this sort of review sort of suggests that maybe we should be rearranging the menus to make them more consistent. So maybe views and menus, for example, don't belong on the same list as comment types, contact forms, content types, media types. But that's a larger question. What can we do with what's here? And also, you know, we should start off by considering, is the proposed text an improvement over the current text? Because if it is, then maybe we should go ahead and make the suggested changes now and consider further changes later. Aaron, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting point about well, first of all, I think we should let's not let the scope of this issue change too much. So I agree with you there, and I think it's an interesting point to say, should there be a wider restructure of the list? Maybe something similar to what the configuration screen is like, where we have those different groupings, because there is a couple of different groupings that stand out to me, where you've got the content types, block types, of course, now, comment types, other things like that, where what you're really doing is you are managing the structure of your content. You're defining the fields, and so there's really a strong emphasis there on structured content, right? But then you've got other things where, like views and menus, where yes, there's an element of structure there, but you're really you're creating different representations. Well, maybe not so much menus, but certainly for views and maybe the display modes and things, you're creating and managing different representations of your content. So I think there's a couple of sort of key groupings that we could pull out there. And I don't know if that, maybe that helps us with writing some help text here, if that's what we're also doing. But yeah, that's kind of where my thoughts are at the moment.
I'm gonna have to jump off soon, but I just wanted to go and say that the other thing looking at this is that there's also a lot of redundant text, like saying, aside from create and manage, which are repeated, there's also like book outlines allowed to create content types for books, like that you've got, what else we have forum hierarchy, blah, 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 forum topics, menus and menu links. Like, is there a way that we can reduce the repetition of words, like, especially when you've got the header menu? Do we need to go off and, is there a way to simplify this? We're not repeating the words menu, form, content, fields as often as we are.
So you're specifically thinking that if we have a label and description text or help text, can we avoid repeating the label text in the description text?
Yes.
And then the other repetition that jumps out to me is fields, forms, and display settings, which would be addressed by Aaron's suggestion of making this page look more like a configuration page. Grouping those together, so then we wouldn't need all this repetition.
I mean, ultimately, it comes down to what are we doing to help the user, and is the content that we've got right here, does that actually help us? Does that actually help the user, or would it be useful to pull on other stuff that provides a more useful description for the user to understand what is in there?
Basically, those proposed descriptions list more or less the functions available within each of the pages, but it might be too abstract, wouldn't, as Mike said, maybe it should be more of a high-level explanation what basically comment type means and entails, instead of a list of functionality managed form and display settings of comments.
So yeah, looking at taxonomy, for example, it's, create and manage categories for content. Well, what does that mean? If you're a non-technical person, you don't know what a taxonomy or a folksonomy or any of those onomies is, why would you use a taxonomy? You'd use a taxonomy to go off and to help find related content, to be able to group content together in a way that allows for you to more easily find information. If providing more examples, perhaps.
But with the example of taxonomy, there's also another point. The wording and the terms used within the description should match the terminology used on that page. And for example, categorization, you can't find there. Instead, maybe it is a more abstract term, but use vocabularies, for example. That is the term for add vocabulary, for example. And me as a user, if on one page I have a certain set of terms and on the other page another set of terms, it's confusing.
I absolutely agree, Rolf. That's a very good point. But I'm going to jump off on this and say, good luck. This is a real puzzle to try and figure out. So I really appreciate you taking on you all taking on the task to try and clarify this. It's been a problem for many Drupal releases. So this is good to get it fixed.
Thanks, Mike. And Quinn, you have to leave soon too. Do you have any comments you'd like to make before you jump? You're still muted if you are.
Yes, I'm still thinking about what Mike said. Yes, as a user, we like to have more details. Take taxonomy, for example. I probably would say something like create, manage, or organize and categorize the content. Something like that, is a little bit more details.
Yeah, so at least an attempt was made for that one to give sort of a more user-centric description of what it does, and you're suggesting improving on that, which is sort of the opposite direction of where this issue is going. This issue is going to use exactly the same phrase for each, but just make the last word different for each item. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks, Benji. I wonder. I was listening to Mike talking there, and as well, and I wonder where we, if we think, I guess this is up to us. We could agree this right now. If we wanted, let's say we did want structure to ultimately group things like configuration does. Potentially that means we could start to think, okay, do we need very repetitive descriptions for each individual item? Or do we just need a common piece of help text that could then be displayed under the grouping for, that would group like content fields, content, comments, blocks, So I wonder if we decide that's the way to go, and we don't have to, but let's say we did, potentially that could allow us to think, okay, what is the ideal description text for the future? And if we're okay with repeating that just now and replicating that across all the individual ones, but knowing we're going to, change that in the future, maybe that helps us in solving what should the description text be at the moment.
That's a good point. So you don't try to expand the scope of this issue to the ultimate solution, but keep the ultimate solution in mind while working on this issue.
Yeah, because if we, let's say we get a good description text for, you know, something types, whether it's content, comments, whatever. We can then, if we have that, we can say, okay, well, you know, it becomes easy to transfer that to help text in the future for that grouping.
But one question in regards of the help text. Would you have a dedicated help text for each category? Because if you take a look at the config page at the moment, there isn't any help text at all, and the pattern doesn't exist in that regard. There's only on other pages a single help text for the whole page, not for dedicated sections.
I was thinking that you would have help text for a particular section, but I suppose that's a good point, because I don't know technically if that's even possible with the current setup. That might require modifications to how that works. But again, I think we as Benji often likes to say, we don't necessarily need to worry about the implementation details here. If we agree that that is a good idea, then we could make that work, you know?
Yep, I agree. Just wanted to note that currently there isn't anywhere else in the interface, as far as I know, such a pattern. But yeah, it would be good.
Right. Yeah.
So I have a feeling that we already have an issue to make the structure page look more like the configuration page, but maybe what I'm thinking of is this issue, which is to create a content, I guess, make the content page look more like structure.
Yep.
So the
That's
issue I
issue
pasted
number.
into the Zoom link. Go ahead.
Issue number is 2862859.
So here we are saying, oh, the structure page needs more organization, make it more like configuration. And this issue is saying that the content page needs to be sort of a container page, more like structure, rather than the list of nodes, which it currently is. Lots of different ideas. And sometimes they conflict. Yeah, and I guess about the time that Aaron joined, we were trying to come up with help text for the structure page so that we could avoid all of this repetition. And I guess it'll be easier to do that if we group the things that are really very similar, everything that involves fields, forms, and display settings. If we can group those, make it more like the configuration page, that makes it easier to write the help text. So yeah, if the ultimate help text is going to include the fields, forms, and display settings, then for now, I guess it's okay to leave all that repetitive text in the current descriptions.
How many categories would you suggest? At least 2 or 3, maybe?
So there's one grouping that's very clear.
Yeah.
So that includes
block types,
block types,
content types,
contact forms, media types, and taxonomy. That's about half of what's on this page, right?
Yep. Display modes, maybe even. No, that's different.
Yeah, they don't have fields.
True.
Yeah, I was quite a fan of moving display modes to configuration actually. So maybe there's another discussion there about where they belong.
But would menus and views fit in one category together? Because to me, they feel a bit different.
Yeah, they are very different. Sort of display modes are kind of funny that you have a separate page for creating display modes, and those are used in the big five when you're managing fields, forms, and display settings. The display modes give you options for the display settings.
Isn't there a sub page under display modes? I think there's more options when you go in there, isn't there?
Yeah, you can have display modes for each
Form modes and view
entity
modes.
type.
Yeah, so I guess in itself, there's a category right there, display modes.
That way?
So frankly, display modes do not deserve to be this prominent. It is silly that when I'm configuring the displays for my media type or my content type, when I'm looking, actually, Ralph, can you go configure a content type or something? And manage display.
I managed display. Okay.
So here I have default RSS and teaser, and if I go to the bottom of this page, I have the others that are currently not enabled. And then I have that link at the bottom, manage view modes.
Yep.
You know, that link, manage view modes, is sort of where it comes up when you need a new view mode. That's where you're going to be looking, and you will follow that link. I don't think you need display modes in the administration menu or on the structure page at all.
The only nitpick I might have is per default, the field set custom display settings is collapsed, and for new users finding that, they not necessarily expand that. And then, but yeah, overall, I agree that it's not really necessary. But the reasoning why I've placed display modes before is the creation order, meaning you set up your display modes first, and then you're able to act on those within that group of block types, comment types, and so forth. That was the reasoning. It shouldn't be that prominent. It's more in regards of the order of creation.
Normally people start with the standard profile and they have this list of display modes available to them. And I think most people don't need to create additional view modes. It's not something that comes up all that often. Also scroll back up to the top of the page where it says default RSS teaser. Maybe we should add another tab or a link that would, you know, let us enable additional or create new. So like maybe that collapsed details element at the bottom should instead be a new tab. Maybe that would make it more discoverable. Alt RSS teaser and other. All right, but I am digressing very far from the original issue, and we've got 20 minutes left. So if we are going to have some sort of reorganization of the page and grouping that will let us avoid the repetitive text, then for now, shall we just say go ahead and use this repetitive text?
No, he wanted to sit and relax. Yeah, no, that's what I just there's a breakfast cake. Oh, but I brought.
And Ralph, could you add some spacing to the current descriptions at the top to make it easier to compare with the proposed descriptions?
Again, please. What I haven't understood what you said in the beginning. Sorry.
Go to the current descriptions and add spaces. So after block layout colon in the current descriptions.
Or wait a second, I just edit format text spacing. That way? Or more?
No, I wasn't thinking vertical space. I was thinking horizontal space. After the colon, put enough spaces so that things line up as they do under proposed resolution.
That you meant. Okay. Okay.
There's an extra comma in content types after fields,
In here?
comma, form, comma. Yeah, in there.
But that the chat should that be removed?
No,
I thought the other way around, that those should be added there. There and there, shouldn't it?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's variously called the Oxford comma
Yeah.
or the sequential comma or something like that.
Oxford comma. But I was uncertain because of the two ends, and therefore which counts, if it's a real sequence or not.
Fields, forms, and display settings is clearly a sequence.
As a software developer, I would drop the ands altogether, but I realize that's not good English.
So should we make small adjustments to those proposed descriptions and create a follow-up after that?
I'm actually beginning to think that this is a step in the wrong direction. Ralph, as you often point out, putting all of this repetitive text at the beginning puts the important stuff at the end. You know, the description just really isn't adding anything to the label. You're just putting it this standard block of text, create and manage fields, forms, and display settings for, and then you're repeating the label. That is not a helpful description.
And you could argue that the for and the label are also not necessary.
I'm sorry, the form and label?
Sorry, the literal word for, and then like for content forms, like that is, to me, feels unnecessary.
Oh, the end of it.
Yes.
And if you remove that, then 3 or 4 or 5 of these descriptions are identical.
Yeah.
And then there's also some sort of inconsistency with, for example, if you take a look at content types, there you have content. In regards of media types, you then have media types, and for comments, the same comment types and comments, and it's a bit confusing. And also there's another problem with forums. The scope for the last part of the forums description is a bit broader. The settings aren't just about the forum topics, but the forums in general. For example, the number of topics per page and the sort order you're able to set there.
Does it make our lives easier or harder if forums and books are getting pulled out of core?
Yeah, but that would happen only in Drupal 11, so a few years.
Yeah, true.
And another detail, as a unexperienced user, if I read, for example, the description for views, create and manage customized lists of content, I'm not sure if I understand that. And also, if you take a look on the views page, just one of the options is a view. Then you have also the option to display it in a grid or in, what else was it on? Don't know from the top of my head, but content. as a table, unformatted list, responsive grid, HTML list, or grid. That's just naming it customized list. It refers just to one apparent aspect of options a user has there.
Well, manage is a very broad term, so you're formatting the lists could reasonably be considered part of managing.
I like a couple of words that could be used for views are representations of content. So you could do something like the word build as well, I think works for views. So something like build or maybe even the word construct different representations of content
or display a selection of content.
maybe, but I think you can also create like JSON API views endpoints.
Oh,
I suspect, I don't know. I just have a weird feeling you can.
Not JSON API, but REST endpoints.
Oh, REST endpoints. Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, sort of. JSON API is a standard structure, and so you can't customize it the way you can a view.
Yeah.
but in regards of the views description, would it make sense to add something like what it basically is, a visual query builder?
So who is the audience and which term will make more sense to them? The audience is site builders. Do we want to tell site builders that we have a visual query builder, or do we want to tell them that we can create customized lists of content?
Or combine both?
A visual query builder to create customized lists of contents. Make
Yeah.
everyone happy.
Yeah, but that way it's more or less clear. You know the
Right.
function behind it, and you know the result, what you're able to create with it.
Doesn't make me happy.
Why not?
You said it makes everyone happy.
You're just being difficult.
Yes, yes, you're right. I'm being very pedantic right now.
Also keep in mind that if the book module is not enabled on a particular site, we won't have that item. And on the other hand, contributed modules frequently add their own links to the structure menu. So I'm thinking that we should close this as a won't fix. And instead, what we should do is have just 2 sections on the structure page. And one for entity types, although we probably wouldn't label it that way. And the other for everything else. Because given that we don't know what modules will be enabled and what contrib modules might add things to the page, I don't think we can do any more than that. But I think that separating out the entity types from everything else would be an improvement to the page.
True.
Yeah.
could be something like words that come to mind would be like information architecture, structured content. Oh, those are the only two. Okay.
I've never liked the term information architecture. It basically means menu structure, right?
Yeah, it's
Or it's often used to mean that.
yeah. I feel like structured content. If we were to compare the two, structured content's a bit more representative of what you're doing there, like you're building structure of your for your content, or
So
You-
you're suggesting structured content as an alternative to entity types.
yeah, I think that's more, at least with the people I know and I work with,
Yeah.
that feels more of a understood term. And maybe also if we were grouping like if we were going to group menus and taxonomy, you could group them by a term like hierarchies or something. I don't know if that's a good idea, but like that's one possible grouping. I kind of don't like it though.
Yeah, I really want to group all the entity types together, and I agree that structured content is a much better label than entity types.
Hmm.
And call the other category other.
Dumping ground. Throw all your structure here.
Your unstructured structure.
Yes. Can we just call one structure and one unstructured?
So how do you feel about this? I think this issue isn't a won't fix.
I am leading in that direction. I think if we're gonna do something, we should do it right. And the whole reorganization around blocks has proven that if we put effort in, we can actually do something. So not that we don't accomplish things, but you know, it's quite often it feels like it's easy to propose an idea and then it never happens. But if you put a coordinated effort into doing it, things will happen, you know.
Right.
Yep.
And looking at this issue, about half the comments here are from the bot saying, it's won't apply to this version. Let's bump it to the next version. So it's not as though this is an active issue that has had a lot of work done on it. I think the proposed resolution is certainly more consistent, but not more helpful. And just it ends up making the descriptions boilerplate plus the label, which just seems to me like not useful description.
Boilerplate plus a label is good.
I clearly feel the strongest about this, so I guess I should leave a comment to that effect. Should I immediately close it as won't fix? Shall I leave it open for a couple of weeks and let people interested in it respond?
Well, you said it's not been a very active issue, although it seems to keep popping up in Slack. But if we closed it as one fix, but then pointed people to another issue talking about, groupings of the structure page, at least then there is at least then we're directing effort in the right direction rather than just leaving it,
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I can open a new issue for it.
And it's probably worth us figuring out if we can even if the, I don't know what it's actually called, but like the way that configuration is presented with the groups, because presumably we'd be using that same just type of display. If it's possible to present the help text per group, that would be good to, because that would get a sense of like how much effort would be involved. I am also really mindful that it does mean we have to change all of the URLs for everything under structure, which scares me a little bit, but at least we have a process for doing it. I'm glad we did the block stuff, because yeah, we've got we know we've got a pattern that we can reuse for doing that, but there's just, yeah, a lot of URLs there.
Okay, we are running up against the hour, so thank you for joining. I will leave a comment on the issue. I'll open up the new issue. I probably won't close it as won't fix just yet. I'll give people a chance to reply. Any last comments? Okay, we'll do it again next week.
Thanks, Benji. Thanks, Ralph. Thanks, Quinn.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice weekend.
You too.